Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. Welcome you all in PIST Virtual Learning System Session 2020. Dear students, this lecture is for grade first year, subject computer science. This is our 48th video lecture and we are on chapter number 7, Database Fundamentals. Today, in this lecture, we are going to start, and in fact, we are going to discuss about reduced syllabus, and then we will continue this chapter with the key points of this chapter, and then in the last, we will solve exercise MCQs. So, dear students, as we know that the rise in the COVID-19 in 2020 led to the cancellation of the matric and intermediate final exam 2020, as well as the closure of the schools and colleges across the country. The federal board hence developed a scheme for promoting students to the next class in lieu of the final exam. In the light of this closure and the effect that it has had on students' education, the syllabus will be reduced for the 2021 final exams. This decision is made by the federal board in order to accommodate the matric and intermediate students after this trying time. So, according to the federal board, they reduced all subject syllabus. So here we have reduced syllabus of computer science. Chapter number 1, overview of computer system. In chapter number 1, we have 1.1 introduction to computer and 1.2 computer software. They reduced 1.3 and cut down the topic 1.3 from the chapter number 1. In second chapter, which is computer memory, this is 2.1 introduction to computer memory, and then we have 2.2 main memory and 2.3. Here in this chapter, they reduce the point 2.3 secondary memory. Then we have chapter number 3, central processing unit, 3.1, inside the CPU, and then 3.2 CPU operation. And that's it in chapter number 3. And chapter number 4, inside the system unit, we did not have chapter number 4 in this reduced syllabus, and we directly jump to the chapter number 5. So chapter number 5 is network communication and protocols. 5.1, the topic included 5.1, introduction and network communication, and then data communication standards, 5.3, TCP IP. And then we have chapter number 6, wireless communication. In wireless communication, so we have 6.1 introduction, and then we have chapter number 7, database fundamentals. In this chapter, we have 7.1 introduction, 7.2 basic database terminologies, 7.3 planning a database, 7.4 data modeling and entity relationship diagram, and 7.5 relational schema. So dear students, in previous lecture, we have finished till 7.5. We have covered all this given syllabus. And in the next chapter, in the next lecture, we will continue chapter number 8 according to the reduced syllabus. But till here, we have finished relational schema. In the previous lecture, we have finished 7.5 relational schema. So today we will continue some important point of this chapter. This chapter consists of the important points in which chapter which we already discussed. First of all, we have data referred to facts and figures. It is raw material that is input in the computer for processing. So data is raw facts and figure which is used for the data processing. We input data into the computer, then after processing it is converted into the information. Information is organized form of data that is meaningful and easily understandable. So user can understand information. Information can be understood by the user easily, and it is a processed form of data. Basically, information is a processed form of data. Then a database is a collection of related data. A database consists of one or more data files, and data files contains fields. Then a database management system, DBMS, is a collection of programs that enables user to create and maintain database. Then in this chapter, we have discussed database administrator. DBA is the person in charge or for supervising the database and the use of DBMS in an organization. Then in a relational database model, data is stored in tables, and the tables are linked by the means of common fields. Each column of table holds one field and each row one record. It is the most commonly used database model. Then all the information about one person or item is held in a record. When records are stored in tables, rows represent records and columns represent fields. Then next is key is an attribute or field that is used to identify records in table. Entity is a thing of interest to an organization about which data is to be held. For example, employee in an organization or books in a library is an example of entities. Attribute is a property or characteristics of an entity. Relationship is a link between entities in a relational database. It is the link between tables. So relationship is used to create the link between the tables. Data modeling is the process of creating a conceptual data model that identifies the data needed by an organization to achieve its objective. Then an instance in a database is the actual content of the database at a particular point in time. Then in the previous lectures, we have discussed cardinality and modality. Cardinality refers to the maximum number to times an instance in one entity can be associated with the instance in the related entity. Modality refers to the minimum number of times an instance in one entity can be associated with an instance in the related entity. And then we discussed entity relationship diagram. ER diagram is a dramatic way of representing the relationship between the entities of a database. So all these topics and all these areas we have discussed in detail in all previous lecture. So today we will continue now, and in fact we will end this chapter and we will solve the exercise of this chapter. So first of all, we have MCQs. Select the best answer for the following MCQs. Duplication of data in different files is called dash. Data inconsistency, data redundancy, data overflow, and invalid data. Yes, duplication of data in different files is called dash. So dear students, what do you think? What is the answer? Yes, data inconsistency, data redundancy. Yes, data redundancy. The B answer is B, data redundancy. Repetition of and the duplication of data. Data redundancy means that the duplication of data in different files. When you will repeat the same record in different files, that is called data redundancy, the duplication of your data. Number 2 is if data is not updated in a file, in file-based data management system, what types of problem will it cause? A, data inconsistency. B, data redundancy. C, data overflow. D, invalid data. If data is not updated in a file, in file-based data management system, what type of problem will it cause? Yes, dear students, what do you think? What is the answer of this? Data inconsistency, data overflow, data redundancy, or invalid data? Yes, the answer is A, data inconsistency. If data is not updated in a file, it means that it is inconstant. Data inconsistency. So all these are the problems which we face in flat file system. When we have database in flat file system in the form of flat file system, so these are the problems. If you remember, we have discussed it. So data redundancy, data inconsistency, all these are the problems which we have in a flat file system. And database management system remove all these problems. It removes the data redundancy and inconsistency, invalid data and data overflow. All these problems removed by the database management system, DBMS. Number 3, a record is also called dash. A, attribute. B, entity. C, property. D, tuple. A record is also called, yes, what do you remember? A record means a row, a complete row. So in when we talk about the table, so record means that when we have a complete information of anything, like if we are keeping information about the students, we are maintaining database about the students. So the complete record of one student is called a one record, one row. That is a one row, one record and one row. So in relational database, when we talk about the relational database, RDMS, so RDMS means that you must use the proper terms for RD and relational database management system terms. So in relational database management system, a record is also called tuple. So tuple is another name of a record and a row, and in relational database we can use tuple and we can call one record as a tuple. MCQs number 4, an attribute is also called record, entity, field, relation. An attribute, so dear students, if you remember that attributes are basically properties and the characteristics. These are the characteristics and the properties of the table. When we have a table, so in tables we have columns. So basically in general terms, if you talk about the table, in general terms, in table we have columns. So these columns are called attributes, and in relational database these attributes are called fields. These are called fields. So in relational database, row is called tuple and row and record is called tuple. Attribute and column is called field. In relational database, another name of record is tuple and another name for attribute is field. The next is, what is a thing of interest to an organization called about which data is to be held? What is a thing of interest to an organization called about which data is to be held? So, field, relation, entity, attribute. So, dear students, what is the thing of interest? So, if you remember that the thing and the information which you want to save about an organization and about anything, so it is called an entity. Entity basically is a complete interest of information and the thing of interest to an organization on which you want to save the data. So this, it can be a student, it can be a books. So this is the entity. Number 6, in which type of database data is held in tables and tables are linked by common files? Hierarchical database, network database, relational database, and object-oriented database. So, in which type of database data is held in tables and tables are linked by common field? So here If you remember that we have discussed about the relational database is a database in which tables are connected with the help of and with are linked by a common field, and that common field is called a key. So if you remember, we discussed that the primary key and the foreign key. So primary key is a common key which we can use in a one table. We can assign a primary key to the one table. With the help of this primary key, we can retrieve the record, and we can use this primary key in the second table as a foreign key. And with the help of this common field, we can create a link and a relationship between two tables. And when we can create the relationship, so this database and these tables are called the relational database. So it is a relational database when data is held in tables and tables are linked by common field. So this is called relational database. Number 7, in which database model data is organized in tree-like structure? So options are hierarchical database, network database, relational database, and then object-oriented database. So in which database model data is organized in a tree-like structure? Tree-like structure means that we have top to bottom structure. So first of all, we have the top, then middle, and then you can call them the parent-child relationship. So here the answer is hierarchical model. So in hierarchical model, we have the root and the base table. Then we have a child table, and it can grow when it will come to the bottom. So it can grow, and we have a child table at the bottom. So it just look like a tree structure. It just look like a tree structure in which we have a branches. There is a one main branch and the root, then we have more branches and it can grow more. Number 8, what refers to the maximum number of times an instance in one entity can be associated with instances in the related entity? So options are relation, B, cardinality, then modality, and D, ER diagram. So what refer to the maximum number of times? Maximum number of times an instance in one entity can be associated with the instance in the related entity. Means that how many maximum number of records it can return. So it can be done with the help of cardinality. Cardinality is refer to the maximum number of times an instance in one entity can be associated with instances in the related entity. So it's a maximum number of times. It is cardinality. The next is what refer to the minimum number of times an instance in one entity can be associated with an instance in the related entity. So what refers to the minimum number of times? So here is the opposite of the cardinality. So what refers to the minimum number of times an instance in one entity can be associated? That is modality. So modality refers to the minimum number of times an instance in one entity can be associated with an instance in the related entity. So this is modality. Number 10, what is a key field called that is used in relationship between tables whose values means a primary key in the other table? So what is the key field? What is the key field called that is used in relationship between the tables whose values matches a primary key in the other table? So if you remember that we have discussed about the definition of the primary key. The primary key is a unique key, and you can assign a primary key in one table, and with the help of this primary key you can access the record easily. But when we will use this primary key as a reference key, to the other table and the next table, so it can be it can be used for the relationship. It can use to make a link between two tables. So the tables whose values matches a primary key in the other table. So which key can be used? So foreign key can be used as a reference key. So foreign key is a reference key, and uh, when we can use the primary key as a reference key to the other table is called foreign key. So foreign key can be null, can be repeat, and can return multiple record, can return multiple record. And dear students, you must remember that when we talk about the relationship and when we talk about the relational database, so the primary key and the foreign keys are used to create a link between the two tables. These are the common field which we can use between 2 and 3 tables to create the links and the relationship. And in relational database, the most important feature is the relationship, and we can create the relationship with the help of the primary key and the foreign key. So in this chapter we have already discussed about the types of the relationship. Also we have one-to-one relationship, one-to-many relationship, and many-to-many relationship. We have different types of relationship. So we can create the relational database with the help of the primary key and the foreign key. So dear students, now you have a lab activity. So your activity is: a city has many universities and each university has many departments. Each department has many teachers. So define the entities and attributes for these entities. Like in this activity, you can get the entities like university, departments, teacher. All these are your entities. So from the above statement you can find your entities easily. A city has many universities. Each university has many departments. Each department has many teachers. So you can find easily your entities from the given statement. After finding the entities, you have to define the attributes for these entities. So in the previous many lectures we have discussed about the attributes. So you have to mention the ID, then you can give the name like the university uni ID. You can use the uni ID and name of the university, branch, city, like this. Then department ID, department name, and then your entity is teacher's post, so teacher ID, teacher name, qualification, subject, like this. And in the last you have to draw ER diagram for these entity relationship diagram, ER diagram for these entities. So you can also do the practice for some other activities and some other ER diagrams, like an institute offer many courses. A student is allowed to register in only one course at a time. An instructor teacher many courses. Draw the ER diagram of entities, courses, student, and instructor. So you can draw ER diagram for student, courses, and instructor. So do more and more practice for ER diagram, entity relationship diagram. So dear students, we have finished chapter number 7, database fundamentals. And thank you so much. Inshallah, in next lecture we will continue. Inshallah, in next lecture we will start the new chapter, chapter number 8, according to the FBISC reduced syllabus. So till then, Allah Hafiz.